and Institutions Committee. It's Tuesday, February 4th. We're continuing our testimony. This afternoon, we shifted gears. We're talking on the Capitol bill now, and we have before us the Commissioner of BGS to go through her portion of the building community grants. So, Commissioner, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. And it that's right. So the section that I'm here to talk about is Section 5 in your capital bill. And Section 5 is what is now known as the Building Communities Grants Program. And historically, many years ago, this committee and the Senate committee used to have individual communities come in and talk about special projects that they had and how they had community match or in-kind services. And they just needed a little bit of money to get them across the finish line. And every year, your communities that you represent, it just kept getting larger and larger. So the Institutions Committee came up with the Building Community Grants Program, which was absolutely, it has been, and we're going to talk about it in just a minute, but I think it started back in, I want to say like 2012 or 2014. You can't quote me on that. And it's been a very successful program. When you first created it, we had the recreational grant program and the educational program. So I think there were 2 grant programs. You now have 7. And it really is, and you have everyone who manages this program is going to come in and talk about it. BGS has oversight of 3 of those. But when, or excuse me, 4, it is a process that is outlined in statute. Your statute directs us how the boards to make these decisions will be made up of and how they're, what the process is. So there's community members, there's legislative members, and then there's administrative members. I'm not going to go through each one of those. The program's successful. And you've continually funded it. I'm gonna take you through our section. How about that? So on the slide, these are the grants that in Section 5, you're going to see there are 3. The money is appropriated to different entities. It's appropriated to BGS, Agency of Commerce and Community Development, Agriculture. So you just want to pay close attention to that. The Department of BGS oversees the recreational facilities grants, human service and educational facilities grants, and the Regional Economic Development Grant Program. And the Regional Economic Development Grant Program is the newest one to all of these. And so each awardee can get no more than $25,000. They have 2 years to complete their project. The committee members are established in Title 24, Chapter 137. And there are some other guiding principles that are outlined in that statute in general. BGS administers these programs for you. So we're the department that collects them. The commissioner is on the committee, but we organize everything for the communities to apply to make sure everything comes in, that they get it. And then we manage the monitoring of, did they spend the money? When are they asking for it? And we issue the check. In 25, we had 114 applications throughout those grants, and it totaled over 1.8 million in grant funds. So the first grant we're going to talk about is the recreational facility grant. This is to create recreational opportunities in all Vermont communities. We are asking in FY26 for $250,000 and the same amount in FY27. There are no grants that, I just want to say this up front, that are being, proposed to be funded with cash. These are, we haven't identified any of those, so I think that's important. The next sheet, if you want to turn, I thought it'd be really interesting to just give you a quick snapshot from 2016 to 25. You can see the number of grants that we receive annually with the fiscal year, the number of grants we were able to fund, the total amount of money that came in for the recreational grant. So you can see in 25, we had $409,000 in requests. And we had 300,000 to distribute. So you're making headway, and this is an ongoing program, and communities have learned to apply on all different types of projects, right? So maybe they started out with a recreational grant program, now they're doing a regional development. They've become very smart and savvy about all of these grants and how they support their community. And you've done some remarkable things with the money. So some examples in FY 25, you'll see we awarded the committee awarded 12,500 to help with the dog park in the town of Brandon. This is just a snapshot, everyone. But Johnson was $6,000 to help with the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. So right there, you can see a difference in between a $6,000 request and a $12,000. Where in Burlington, we did 25,000 to create a roller rink at Letty Park to support that. Town of Bennington to create a large concrete bowl to their skate park. So the requests come from all different sizes. And all of these communities have their match money, have all of their documents in place. So they have a commitment from either contributors or from their community. And I think that's what's the most important about it. So I'm going to move right along to the human services and educational facilities. This one is $150,000 for FY 26 and FY 27. And if you turn to the next page, again, you'll see the summary. This grant is funded at a lesser amount. I think 200 and 250 have been the average. But if you look, again, I think it's just quickly looking at the data. You know, in 25, we had 14 applications, and 12 of those applications received funds.
Do you have a question?
No, I figured it out, but I do have a new question. Do you run out of money? Is that the primary reason why not all 14 are?
You can't make that assumption because someone may apply and think that their project is ready to go to the standards, and maybe the committee doesn't support it because it's missing something, or they applied for the wrong grant. We do try to, when we can, if they applied, and I'm just, I haven't been there for a while, but if they apply for, a recreational grant and it's a barn grant, we're going to try to get it to our partners at HP. Or if it's recreational and it's really regional development, because we administer the 3 at BGS, we will try to ensure that those are forwarded and given consideration. So it's not necessarily money. Sometimes a portion of their projects are eligible and elements of it are not. So they may ask for 25,000, but I'm just using numbers as examples. 15,000 of it really fits to the scope of what your intent is. So the committee they'll go with that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, this is the same as the other, but it's just, I think it's really nice to see, the balance. And to me, this sort of demonstrates at a snapshot that your appropriations are on spot. They're pretty close. I know one would say, well, there's 244,000, but we gave 12 of them money. So you have to get into the detail. The next one, and my order may be off, but that's okay, is the Human Services Grant Program. And I feel like let me restate myself. If you'll see the first we have education and human services combined. So what this is doing, so if you look at line five, item 5, I'm just gonna, I think this is human services and education, and if you go to item 6, that's where you'll see the 150 and the 150, and then the two spreadsheets are the education and the human services, and how they split that up. And this doesn't make sense.
They're split up on the spreadsheet too, into both. Here's education. They're at 100.
I know, but we have two grant programs. We have item 5, which is human services and education, which is a 250,000 a year, and then item 6 is human services and is that a duplicate? Can I move?
Wanda,
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
have,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I
But
don't
then
have
they
the
said human service
spreadsheets.
Education at the end, but. Human services. Oh, is it? human service?
It's two programs, but, so if you go to your book, item 5 is human services and educational facilities grants for human services. And this is competitive grants for municipalities, for nonprofit organizations, for capital costs within their major maintenance. It's 250,000. But then you go to item number 6. This is competitive grants. I think we may have, I want to verify. I think we have a duplication. But can we do that at another time?
Yeah, sure.
Because I need to check that out.
The duplication of slides, do you know? Because this one is ed fiscal year.
The one was for education, the one was for human services.
Sorry. Look at the book.
Wanda, Wanda,
that's-
I
Yes,
don't have,
Madam Chair.
I don't have the spreadsheets in front of me, but
That should
Wanda,
be
these
150.
two, the human services and education used to be combined. And a few years ago,
It's
we
150,
separated
150.
them because we weren't sure which one was performing, getting more applications than the other.
So I think you're
this is-
absolutely right, but the way that it's presented in the book is the old way, Madam
The old way.
Chair.
Yep.
And that's what was, I knew what I had in my brain, but what I was reading was not aligning.
Our spreadsheet is correct. There's just a typo on page 14 of the book.
Yeah,
Under human services, it should be 150 and 150.
so phew, and the slide is correct,
Yeah.
but I was trying to multitask with too many books.
We're on track now, so that's good.
We're on track. The money is right.
Yep.
The book on page 14,
Your binders, everything.
the binders, we have a page that we're gonna have to replace.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, phew, so I'm not gonna use the binder. But you may want to check your numbers in the book. So.
Item 5.
So the examples of project funded, just really quickly, in Wyndham County, the Neighborhood Connections. We did almost a $9,000 award for a kitchen renovation. Windsor County Springfield Hospital, 10,000 to help with their elevator and ADA compliance. Addison County, the food bank, 15,000 for the last gap of that project. And I'm seriously, members of the committee, I remember a point in time where at the end of your session, right, as you were wrapping up markup, every one of these businesses, the food bank would be in here, or the hospital, or the good neighborhood, asking for help. And this program really has made a difference. And so I'm going to move on to the Regional Economic Development Grant Program. I remember when you all started expanding and talking about this, this is really about seed money to get some economic development and growth going. And it's used for multiple different ways to invest in those communities for businesses. We are requesting 250,000 in 26 and 250,000 in 27. Again, the attached spreadsheet will show you the fiscal years the number of applications, the number of what we awarded, and the types of, and the grant amount request. So you were appropriating about 300,000 to these in the past. We are recommending, because of everything in the budget, 250,000 this year. And
One last question, Commissioner,
yes,
just a bigger picture thing. You say we are the ones who are granting all these. Who is that? Is that you?
no, so you, in each committee in statute, you actually have, you identified how the committee will be made up.
Okay.
So I'm looking at one right in front of me, the Human Service and Educational. So it is, the committee shall include the Secretary of Human Services or their designee, Commissioner of Buildings, or their designee, 2 members of the Vermont General Assembly, 1 appointed by the Speaker, 1 appointed by the Senate, and 3 representatives of a broad-based community organization such as the United Way of Vermont, who shall be selected and appointed by the governor.
Okay.
So each one of these committees now have a specific, each one of these grants have committees that align with their mission.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, appreciate that.
So if I can also add, the applications go to Department of Buildings and General Services. And the applications are sent out to municipalities and nonprofits, usually sometime during the summer, July, August. And our goal has been that these grant application forms are very, very simple. Because a lot of these organizations, they are all volunteers and they don't have professional grant writers. So we make sure the applications are understandable. And then they get submitted to BGS, and then BGS will submit that to each of those individual committees that oversee the 3 programs.
That's absolutely correct. My understanding, Madam Chair, is that this has, September has been, about the time that the department has been getting out its grant applications, or at least having them come back in. But that's been the month that they've been working from for a few years. And it's working, as you can see. You know, this year we will be reaching out, because it is a new biennium, to make sure membership stands as everyone who has there's been changes. So we will definitely reach out to, the legislative leadership, the governor's staff, and then any agency or department that is mentioned to see, if any roles, should change on that, and if we have enough members. I do think we've had a couple of people step down. I just don't have the detail on that in front of me. And that is your grant part, 3 of your grants. And I apologize for any confusion. I
I
was
think
losing my book.
We're there.
I think also what's really important when if you talk to folks back home, any nonprofit or municipalities, this is for construction projects. It is not for operating costs. It's for actually purchasing either long-term equipment or bringing in a boiler, heating system, or roof, or adding on to a recreational area. It could be like a skate park, a skateboarding area. It's not for operating.
And I think, your regional development grant, we may do some money to, we may be participating in a renovation of a space that has to do with an incubator program. And I'm looking at you, Deputy Commissioner, because we just did a tour and we were in Randolph, and I think was that a regional grant at the home? Yeah, or human service.
Yeah, it was. I think
It was
Human
wonderful.
Services. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember the home?
I will need to follow up on it, but it's a senior living.
Assisted
home,
living?
Yeah, in Randolph, and it was wonderful. And they were able to renovate a sun porch, which was quite a project, and it's beautiful work. And it's just a wonderful space for the residents to sit, and they're also doing some upgrades with their ramp,
ADA.
ADA. And so that was one of their funding sources was this grant program. They have a number of others, and it was just really great to see the results of the grant program.
And having it be a program that's in the heart of a community, and it's been a facility that has served generation after generation after generation of family members, and it's gone through a transition. So to be able to bring that, to be a part of that through that grant made a difference.
Your question, Will?
Yes, I do. So you said the grant application itself's fairly simple.
Mhm.
Is that available on your website for us to?
Yes. As I say that, it was. But if you can't find it, let me know, Representative.
So can I
Can
just
can you
add-
introduce yourself for the record, by the way?
Emily Kosicki, Deputy Commissioner of BGS for the record. I'm pulling up right now on our website just to confirm. I don't think, applications and instructions are available on our website. If you just Google BGS Building Community Grants, you'll find a dedicated landing page that has a lot of information about the program. You can also find grids of approved and non-approved applications, so you can see what's been funded in your community and what projects might be in the pipeline if they need to come back for another round.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank
you, Commissioner.
I'm gonna tell you this.
Are you forgotten? Pleasure.
Well, no, I was confusing myself. My advocate.
NHP?
Yes.
Where are we up to?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Caitlin Corkins with the Division for Historic Preservation. Laura is going to be running the PowerPoint for me. I'm going to talk about two more of the Building Communities grants. So you already got a wonderful introduction to sort of the overarching program. These are two more of those Building Community grants that are administered by our division, Division for Historic Preservation. So I'm going to start with the Historic Preservation Grant Program. This program is a 50-50 matching grant of up to $20,000 to assist municipalities and nonprofit organizations on capital projects that involve historic buildings. So buildings that are either listed or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. This program was established in 1986. It's a very popular, well-loved program that has thankfully been supported by this committee since its inception. And the governor's recommended budget for the next year, 2 years, is $250,000 each for FY26 and 27. Laura can go to the next one. So this is just a snapshot of the funding over the last 10 years. Since the inception of the program, we've funded over 670 projects in communities around the state, over 7 million granted through the program. As you'll see from the chart, demand has remained fairly steady over the last decade, even considering all of the upheavals we've had with the pandemic and summer flooding. I do want to note that there has been a slight dip, you'll see in 2025 in the number of applications we received. I think that is a reflection of some of the upheavals we've had over the last few years, specifically around people being able to find contractors that are available to do these kinds of projects. There are a lot of people that sort of have retired, aged out, not enough people joining the trades. A lot of the projects we fund are very specialized work because we are dealing with historic buildings. And so it does take contractors with a lot of skill and knowledge to take on these projects. Even with that slight dip, we're still, well oversubscribed. As you can see, there's always more demand for the program than we have funding available. And the next slide.
Recapture.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The other thing I should note on this is that the grant amount awarded, you'll notice that it's not a nice green even number. And that is because we do occasionally get recapture from projects that for whatever reason don't move forward, or we do have projects that come in under budget, shockingly frequent amount of times. And so we take those little remainders and then add them into the next year's pool of money. So that's why that grant amount awarded number is not, the 250,000 that we were allocated for the year. Okay, and then I also wanted to just highlight a few projects. And I believe when we were here last week, there were some sheets floating around that had all of the projects that we funded in our most recent round. So in December, we awarded 22 projects in 9 different counties around the state. So this slide shows a selection of those. We have the Miss Bellows Falls Diner, Landmark, which will be getting a new roof thanks to this program. We are funding masonry repairs at the St. Albans Free Library. Stained glass window restoration at St. Peter's Episcopal Church down in Bennington. Cupola restoration of the Village School in Manchester, which is now owned and operated by the Manchester Music Festival. And a window restoration project at the Putney Town Hall. So you can kind of see the types of projects that this program typically funds. These are all community buildings that are landmarks and well-loved by folks in their communities. Okay. So I'm going to keep rolling along to the Barn Grant Program. Again, this is one that is administered by the Division for Historic Preservation, and it supports grants of up to $20,000 for repair and restoration of historic agricultural buildings. So we call it the Barn Grant Program because historic agricultural buildings is a little bit of a mouthful, but it's all types of historic agricultural buildings, anything from a chicken coop to a maple sugar shack to a dairy barn, even a silo, anything that's related to a historic agricultural complex. These are, again, matching grants, 50-50 matching grants. And these do have to be awarded to barns that are either listed or eligible for listing in the State Register of Historic Places. The governor's budget has recommended funding of $250,000 annually over the next biennium for this. Okay, so we've got the same chart layout showing you the last 10 years of funding. Since this program started in 1992, we funded over 500 projects totaling over $5 million in grants awarded. And you'll see sort of a similar trend over the past 10 years. Demand has definitely remained strong. We're oversubscribed every year. We have seen a slight dip in the last couple of years for the same reasons that I think related to the Historic Preservation Grant Program. But even still, there's still there are more barns out there that we wish we could fund every year. We will be awarding the next round of grants through this program later this month, actually. So I don't have the most recent grant award list, but I think what you got last week in those handouts was the list from last year. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
okay.
Exactly. And same notation in terms of the grants awarded. We have the same sort of recapture that we do so that we can spend every penny that we get from the legislature on this program. Next. So this is actually, these are projects that we funded last February because we don't have the ones from this year quite yet. So just a selection again to give you sort of the flavor of what types of things we fund through the program. We have the old Wilbur Place in Calais. That was a foundation project. so replacing a failing foundation. At the Rollin Irish Farm in Westford, it was siding and window repair. The East Monitor Barn in Richmond, anybody who drives from Burlington to Montpelier will be familiar with the twin monitor barns in Richmond. This project was to replace the slate roof on the East Monitor Barn. We also have kind of fun project down in Brattleboro at the Retreat Farm, which has a wonderful complex of historic barns, including multiple barns that are actually sheathed in slate siding. And this was to protect against fire, being less flammable than the typical wood siding we see. So they're going to be doing some repairs to the slate siding of multiple barns. And then just a few other to mention that are not actually pictured on the slide here, but we have Four Corners Farm in Bethel, rehabilitating a corn crib. So again, not a dairy barn, but certainly an important historic agricultural building to that farm. Restoration of a cupola at the farm between in Jeffersonville. And then also at the Elijah Martin Homestead in Peacham, project that we funded there. So to conclude this portion, I just wanted to highlight another recent project that we funded. This is the West Townsend Stone Arch Bridge in West Townsend, Vermont. So this project was funded through the Historic Preservation Grant Program and is a really great success story for us. So the Stone Arch Bridge was constructed in 1910 by a self-taught mason named James Otis Follett. This bridge was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1977 and is in the heart of the West Townsend district. They're very proud of their bridges. They actually have 6 stone arch bridges in Townsend that were constructed by Follett. This one happens to be the longest of the bridges. And it still carries vehicular traffic today. It's a single lane, but it's still in operation. So in the spring of 2018, the town commissioned a study to sort of look at the condition of the bridge and determined that while it was still adequately structurally sound, it was definitely suffering from drainage issues over its 100+ year history that was being exacerbated by the vehicular traffic and the harsh weather that we have in Vermont, of course. So the town recognized the importance of this historic resource, not to mention that it's crucial for folks living on one side of the bridge to get to the village in West Townsend. And so the Historical Society in West Townsend took the lead in applying to a number of programs to support restoration of the bridge. The town received a really prestigious Save America's Treasures grant from the National Park Service. This is a really significant federal grant program that recognizes really significant historic resources. And they were able to use our state grant as a matching source to that federal grant. The town hired a master mason, Brian Post of Standing Stone LLC, to lead the rehabilitation effort. And he gathered a group of masons, not just from Vermont, multi-state team that came together and spent this last summer restoring the bridge. So you can see in that upper photo, they built this sort of cribbing to support the bridge while they basically took it apart, labeled all the stones, and then put it all back together. So the work started in the spring of 2024, finished up this fall, and they had a wonderful ribbon cutting ceremony that we all were able to attend. And again, sort of to echo what you were saying, it was really nice to see the grant in action, see the results of what the program helped to accomplish. So I want to thank the committee for their ongoing support of the program and happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so Caitlin, the proposed funding has been decreased $50,000 from the last several years. So do you think it would be fair to say that that's because of, it's not that there isn't an identified need that could use $300,000 in both the Barn and HP grant programs, but probably some needs that are external to these programs.
I mean, I can't speak for exactly why the governor decided, but that would be my assumption. Yeah, that would be my assumption. Yes.
Right, it's finding the balance with all of the programs that we had to fund. It wasn't, it's not that there's not support because there's money
Yes.
being appropriated to this and the success of all of these programs. It's just taking what the data for, what we have to work with and trying to keep these projects supported along with
Yeah,
all of the
sure.
other demands.
And Sean?
Just really quick, Caitlin. So these, when you have a figure like St. Albans Free Library for 20 grand, that's what you were able to grant them, but they put more money into it than that 20 grand.
Absolutely, yes.
Is-
So at minimum, it's a 50-50 matching grant. So at minimum, they would have had to match that with 20,000.
Okay,
The
gotcha.
reality is a lot of times they're actually matching more than 20,000 because the project cost is more than 40,000 total.
Right, because the bridge was like, it's 20 grand, but there's way they did that for that.
So, yeah.
Good example. That's about the library, the president's right there. So he could tell you probably what,
I'm the president of the museum.
museum, that's the museum?
Wow.
Actually, we got one of these grants a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's
We
right.
did a slate roof repair and it was like 80 grand.
Yep, that's right.
So we got a 1-to-1 match for 20, but it helped.
Right.
It helped.
All right, thank you.
I was thinking it was the museum.
And
Lots
the
of people.
one-to-one match you've laid out in statute,
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
Okay.
all right.
which is important.
Thank you. So, Connor.
Yeah, how often do you see like applicants who are rejected reapply? And is there any sort of priority for them?
Fairly frequently. I, as the administrator of the program, I work with anybody who has not received funding. I'm available to help them maybe improve their application. As the commissioner mentioned, sometimes people have applied maybe for the wrong program, so I can help direct them to a grant that's a better fit for their project. So it kind of just depends. But we definitely see people that it takes maybe 2 or 3 times before they get funded.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you so
And
much. Appreciate
and
it.
sometimes, and I think it's important, sometimes they feel they're ready and that they have their match, but maybe not all of their batch is there, but they're really trying to bank and get their money because they want to get moving.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a criteria that they have to be ready to go.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Shall do it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we have our next presenter, which is Jamie Duggan.
We're gonna.
Oh, you're gonna do it differently?
I'm not sure. If only I could be so that.
Let's go. You've been
I think we're gonna do all the grants together if that works for everyone.
That's fine.
just.
Hi, everyone. I am not Jamie Duggan, for the record. I'm Susan McClure. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Arts Council. So the Arts Council is the state's arts agency. We're the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Arts. And what we're working to do is really ensure that Vermont has creativity at the heart of all of our communities. And we work primarily as grant makers. We take state and federal funding that we receive from the National Endowment for the Arts and our direct state appropriation, as well as facilitating some state programs on behalf of the state as well. So in FY24, just to give you a sense of scope, we awarded around $3.2 million in funding to every county in the state and 131 individuals and 235 organizations. So we grant from everything for things to support new work, for artists to deepen their practice, community building, programming, and of course, the cultural facilities grants that I'm going to talk about today. I'll just note quickly that all of our work is really based on the backbone of both the social and economic role that the arts and culture play in our state. The arts and culture produce $1.2 billion of Vermont's GSP and a little over 10,000 jobs. We also know that when people go to arts and culture events, which do happen in facilities that we're going to talk about today, they spend money at those events as well. And we have the data to back that up, and I'm sure you've all done it as people that attend live events. So we know that by strengthening Vermont's creative economy, we're also strengthening Vermont's overall economy. But we know that it takes, as all things in our complex economic system, it takes the infrastructure to do that. The cultural facilities grants are really what help Vermont's nonprofits, arts and culture organizations and municipalities to enhance, create, and expand the capacity of existing buildings to provide cultural activities to the public. So the way it works is that applicants must own a facility that it's at least 10 years old, and it must be physically located in Vermont. We broadly define cultural activities, things that enhance creative, artistic, aesthetic, historic, scholarly appreciation. That all fits in our definition. And of course, it's one of the 7 Building Communities grants. The program's been going since 1988. And as the Commissioner Manoli said, it switched over a couple years ago to being funded in this fashion. The grants can be anywhere from $1,000 to $30,000, and like all of the Building Communities grants, require a one-to-one match. And these are really funds for what we consider to be the least fundable, but most important projects. So we're talking about facilities projects, rewiring, accessibility. These projects fund a lot of accessibility improvements, especially to some of our historic buildings in which cultural events happen across the state. They're for fixed equipment, environmental controls, hazard mitigation efforts. And actually, over the past 3 years, we've seen a 65% increase in the amount of grant funds requested, and a 40% increase in the number of applications. So even though we have been consistently funded and awarding around $300,000 a year for the past few years, the demand for these grants has grown dramatically and over the past 3 years. We believe that that is because this is one of the few grant programs that fund this type of work for cultural facilities, and it's vitally important capital projects at these organizations. So since the Arts Council took over administration of the project in 2001, we've given out over $4.6 million to 370 arts and culture institutions across Vermont. And a statistic that we've been keeping since 2014, which I think is really important, is tracking where these dollars go. So we're taking the state money, it requires matching funds, and we found that 75% of this funding directly goes to Vermont businesses. And the 25% of funding overall that is spent out of state are on highly specialized projects that we don't have the skills to do here in Vermont. But that's an important number to us, because looking from 2014, we're talking about $9 million overall. So right, we've granted some funding, there's a one-to-one match, but as Caitlin mentioned, most of these projects are much bigger than just the funding that they're getting from us. Many of the improvements funded by the cultural facilities grants, as I mentioned, are ADA compliance issues or address critical safety. Another thing I want to mention is that we're also seeing requests for projects that address emergency preparedness and an increase in energy efficiency projects and climate change mitigation work. So what we're seeing are that these really modest state improvements are having a long-term economic impact on our local communities. And a story I'll just mention is from the Capital City Grange Hall in Berlin. They received a cultural facilities grant in FY20, which seems like 10,000 years ago, but they received a grant in FY20 to install, again, the least exciting project, a sump pump in the basement. And after 2023's historic flooding, they reached out to us to let us know that this was actually the first time their basement had not flooded, was during the big flood, which was really exciting for us. But we know, right, they received a modest grant from us, and that saved them however many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in flood damage. And we're seeing a big increase in requests for these flood mitigation, climate mitigation projects. And in FY25, actually 8 of the 17 projects that were funded were related to energy efficiency or climate change mitigation. So we've talked about through all of my partners here about the increasing demand and the amount of funding that we have to give out, right? We always have more requests and more need than we can ever give. We did see that in the governor's budget, it's recommended at $250,000 for the year. We understand there are so many demands on a very limited state dollars right now. We did also want to stress that these are the only kind of grant funding available for these projects for cultural organizations. And of course, as we act as the state agency, but we're an independent nonprofit, so I can request this in ways that my state counterparts cannot. We, of course, would love to see that level funded at $300,000 for this fiscal year, because we know that we have the demand for it and that it makes a real difference in our communities. You all received in my testimony I sent ahead, and I have some printouts for those who like paper copies, just some examples of the kind of projects we're talking about. We've funded all over the state. So if there is a cultural facility in your community, which there is a high likelihood that they have received this funding over the years as well. I do have my colleague, Michelle Bailey, on Zoom as well, who facilitates, runs the program. She's our senior program manager and has run the program at the Arts Council for many years. So I'm happy to bring her in for questions, but I know that I'm standing between you and the Bennington Monument. So I can't hold up I mean, if I could hold up the Bennington Monument, your meeting would be shorter, but sorry.
Fixers would be.
Exactly. So I'm happy to take questions or.
Question, John?
No, all
Okay.
set.
Anybody have a question? Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Now, is there more? Now, you can come on up.
Yes, I'll leave those there.
Here too.
Oh,
Sorry.
And, I learned that it's not necessarily in order, so that's cool.
Okay, thanks. For the record, my name is Jamie Duggan. I'm the Director of Preservation at the Vermont State Historic Sites. And today we're going to talk about the Bennington Battle Monument. So the Battle of Bennington was perhaps should have been called the Battle for Bennington, right? Because the battle itself was right over on the border of New York. But
We don't talk about that.
We got two people from Bennington.
so
Anyway,
a significant event within the Revolutionary War and a significant event in Vermont's history. About 50 years after the battle, about 1827, there started to be interest in memorializing these events. It was 1856 about that the legislature started the Bennington Battle Monument Association, who was charged with making this project come forward. There were several architects who were considered. Things didn't really go anywhere until 1876, when the legislature authorized $15,000 for the construction of the monument. The Monument Association kicked in $5,000 of their own. And then our colleagues in Massachusetts and New Hampshire who had sent troops to this battle were also invited to be part of the process and donated some funds as well.
We could only wish it was 15,000.
Yeah. So several architects were considered. J. Philip Rinn, who was a noted architect from Boston, received the commission. Construction of the monument started in 1887. Big ceremony laying the cornerstone on August 16th, Battle Day in 1887. The capstone was placed 2 years later in 1889. It weighed 2 tons. And oh yeah, on that slide, great. The monument itself was completed in 1891, opened in June of that year, and it was dedicated in August 19th, 1891, also celebrating Vermont's admittance into the Union as a state. Some other facts about the monument: the stairs were designed by Rinn based on a model that he saw at the Farnese, knew of at the Farnese Palace by Michelangelo in Vignola. There's 417 steps in that staircase to get you up to the observation level, which is about 200 feet up. The monument itself is 306 feet, 4 inches to the top of the 10-pointed bronze star, which is almost exactly the height of the Statue of Liberty, for some context, about 200 feet shorter than the Washington Monument. It is we believe, and we haven't found anything to dispute it yet, but we believe it is the second tallest unreinforced masonry construction in the United States, only behind the Washington Monument. It was designated for significance both at a local, state, and national level, nominated to the National Register in '69, entered onto it in 1971. There are reports of the monument being wet and damp perpetually starting in 1903. I will note that cracks first started appearing in the stones in the 1920s. So the Bennington Battle Monument Association was responsible for the care. They had a hard time with it, let's just say. And they gave the monument over to the state in 1953 in a state of disrepair. Important point. Just a year later, a stone the size of a man's hand fell off the top of the monument in 1954. That's something we're going to continue to hear a little bit about. There was in the 50s a project to repair the top 100 feet of the monument. It included some repointing, some waterproofing. Bronze pins were driven into the stone to try and ameliorate the cracking that was happened. And in 1955, 6 electric fan steam heaters and 2 ventilation louvers were added to reduce the humidity level in the monument. Again, something that had been going on now for quite a few decades. 1955, Otis installed the very first elevator in the state of Vermont in the monument. I think it is the hardest working elevator in the state. It has 2 stops that are 200 feet apart, and it is continually in a damp and corrosive condition. Falls continued to stone in the late 1950s, early 60s. There was some issues, both internal and some external consultants who criticized the past repair work as being inferior. There were disagreements. NPS actually sent 2 architects up to deal with the situation. They identified moisture removal and repointing as the highest priorities for this building. 1959, the top 30 feet were again repointed and waterproofed with an inappropriate material. In April of 1961, a 6.5-pound piece of stone fell off the monument. 1964, the observation level windows were installed, and there was, over the next few years, a number of projects proposed to continue that work, but there kept getting to be higher priorities that would sort of corrupt those funds getting there. In the late 80s, there was an issue with the metal stairs. They were corroding to a certain point that we had to shut the monument temporarily and do some emergency repairs on that, which again took money away from the exterior repointing project that had been planned and was ready to go many years earlier. Where was I? Yep. So moving into the 2000s, we had a number of projects ready to go. However, the interest in lighting the monument as it is today was a discussion that started in the early 2000s and continued for about 6 years. Is that correct? Yeah. And again, the money that perhaps would have been best used for repointing was put towards a lighting of the monument. While this happened, there was no repair work going on. So we see this continual process of deferred maintenance exacerbating things as we go along. The last repair work on the monument was done in 2005. We went with a low bid on that one and ended up working with a contractor out of Connecticut who took a unique approach to scaffolding the work. They built a sliding scaffold that was lowered from ropes that were placed in up at the top. And as they moved down the monument, it sort of slid a little bit bigger because it tapers as it gets to the top. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a contractor who'd be willing to work that way these days, just with a lot of things that have happened.
That was scary to watch.
It's scary to look at the photos. There must have been a lot of liability on that, worker liability on that project. So I was called down to the monument back in 2018, before I was in this position, when I was still working with the project review team, by Mary Lou Ciccone, who has been our site administrator down at that site for 36 years.
45.
40, well, she's been with the state for 45, but 36 at the monument. She is the 8th person to hold the key to the monument since its inception. Yes, so these were the conditions back in 2018. The monument is closed in the winter, but we still have this elevator to contend with and making sure everything running. So in the winter, Mary Lou switches to a schedule where she'll come in once a week and sort of run the elevator up and down and make sure everything's working in the off season. And she was quite frightened to try and climb the stairs to check out a few other things up there. And this is showing that obviously there's a lot of water getting through the building all year long, and it's staying in the building. And that is a huge problem. We decided to start studying the monument to figure out what to do. This is not, while this is one of our resources, this is not a typical structure that you see part and parcel here in different projects. It's a unique structure. I reached out to the National Park Service. I spoke with the project manager for the Washington Monuments, 2 recent projects. We started pulling in some information and went out with an RFP, working in partnership with BGS to do an in-depth investigation and analysis of the structural masonry conditions, the structural conditions related to the interior stairwell, and to understand a bit more about the building and what's going on. You can see these, while we're doing all of this, by the way, nothing has really been fixed yet. So, one of the issues is we're having a lot of shutdowns with the elevator. We have taken great strides to work with our contractor, who has been fantastic with us, to do some extra activities proactively so that we can reduce the potential for the elevator stopping. But that is that's been problematic. We've had issues where people have been stuck in the elevator. We had some coordination issues between a previous vendor and the fire chief in Bennington. Our previous vendor would not give us we'll respond to your call within 1 hour. And, we can't leave people sitting in a small box in the middle of this column for very long. So fire department came and helped, but actually ended up damaging the elevator a little bit. And so we had to do a little communication between those parties. But we're in a really good place now where we understand what the issues are with that elevator, but we have to continually work towards maintaining it. We had a vigorous response to our RFP. We got 10 proposals in. We had a selection committee that was comprised of about a dozen people between BGS Design and Construction, our office, and some of our managers. And we worked with, we went with Stevens and Associates out of Brattleboro as the prime engineer on this project. And an interesting thing, one of the groups we're working with is Vertical Access. They are nationally known industrial rope specialists. I'll tell you a little bit more about the work they did for us. But one of those interesting things was all 10 of those proposals carried Vertical Access as one of their subcontractors. There's really no one else out there kind of doing this type of work. We learned a lot that we needed to know more than we thought. Right? This has been building over the last few years. And so after our phase 1 sort of feasibility and starting to understand it, we did baseline documentation. We laser scanned the monument completely on the inside and the outside. Previous to this, we really had no accurate measured drawings. We had referential drawings, but we were able to scan the project, the monument, to the point where we can now identify every single stone. We've done a number of different scans using a ground penetrating radar, but terrestrially up on the building, to be able to understand the depths of certain stones. Do they tie through to the interior? There's a lot of different things that were looked at. What we realized at that point was that we had to really start taking a deeper understanding into the materials and the mechanisms of their deterioration, how they're performing, and what we can understand from that. We initiated a second phase project, which sort of quickly surpassed the first project. Our deliverable is a 500-page report, which we'll certainly point you towards. But essentially, what through those investigations and using, again, national experts in preservation and material conservation, what we're left with understanding today is that we've got saturated stone. Our moisture monitoring, moisture meters, and some other data tells us that it's 100% saturated, and it's 100% of the time. We even thought that was an anomaly in our testing equipment, because it was just reading 100%. The consultants got higher quality equipment in and fluctuated just to show us, 99, 98%. Calculating the amount of water that could potentially be held within the stone, it's about 66,000 gallons of water sitting in the monument today, tomorrow, and the next day, until something can be done about that. So we know about the saturated stone. Water infiltration is obvious. I have been there on the inside of the monument during a rainstorm, and it literally, you have to keep your rain jacket on and your umbrella because it has at times, with wind-driven rain and some other issues, it's been that bad. We have vertical cracking and spalling and damage to the stone, high humidity levels. And if you think about it, this is essentially a 300-foot tall chimney, right? It is a stone column with a void in the center that goes all the way up. That creates an inverse stack effect, which makes it a lot harder to deal with the ventilation. We have outdated electrical and lightning protection systems. The advanced moisture and continued saturation is now deteriorating the metal components, in particular the stairs and some of the elevator cross tying. And we have exacerbated deterioration due to previous campaigns that were both inappropriate and ineffective.
And incomplete.
And incomplete. That's been another thing. So, any questions on any of that at the moment?
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep it focused here. So we have our team has now provided us with a couple of options for moving forward, and we are in the process of trying to understand what some of the next steps are. One of the problems that I mentioned earlier is that nothing is being done while we're thinking about how to get some traction and moving forward, and that is going to continue to increase the amount of deterioration as well as increase the costs and the amount of work that has to be finished later. The number one takeaway that we have from our consultants is before we can do anything else, we have to dry that monument out. What that is likely going to entail is to create a complete 100% waterproof cover or scrim over and around the monument to not allow any more rainwater or humidity to get in. That will need some type of a structure to hang off of. We're being encouraged to think about getting scaffolding up earlier to help with some of the mock-ups that need to happen. But of course, that is something that we're of the opinion that we need to be ready to go forward to see this project through. It might be a few years, for example, the time we take some of these next steps before construction would start, but we need to start taking these steps. It's unclear how long it's going to take to dry out the monument, but there's a lot of calculations with different size dehumidifiers and fans to move the water, the air. To limit the water. So we know that is that has to be done before we can even do our repairs, because if the monument is continuing to stay saturated, none of the repairs are going to take, and it would be just putting good money after bad. Yes.
So once you dried it out, if you're at that stage, taking it off, how would you keep it dry and it not just get saturated?
That covering would be in place until at least the exterior construction was completed and cured fully.
And the exterior would seal everything in so water couldn't get in?
It would seal everything from one direction, from the exterior. But again, as I was mentioning, because of the issues with condensation and the way the air is moving, we do need to fully repoint the interior as well to keep the integrity of those walls as good as possible. That interior work could come after the exterior work was completed, because then the exterior envelope would at least start functioning. Right now, it's just functioning as a sieve to direct water into the building. So there are some issues that we have to work out with sequencing. and process through the project.
But I would just want to try to ensure that once you've done this major piece of the puzzle, then it just wouldn't be temporary. It would be for the long, or for.
It would be temporary.
hopefully- So it would get wet again. And
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the cover.
No, and then I want.
Well, the building will continue to need maintenance. And that's one thing that we are, highly recommending and trying to institute is that to not allow a structure to go as long as this without getting that attention. I mentioned earlier, we will have to probably be building scaffolds. In order to do that, we still have to do a little geotechnical boring to understand the bedrock subsurface. And we're likely going to have to place some type of probably cement or concrete pads below the ground to found this scaffolding up. It'll be the tallest built structure in Vermont for at least while it's up.
And we do it big.
So the idea those would be left in place, covered over, but that they would be there for a future repointing campaign, which, ideally would happen within the next 20, 30 years after this big restoration effort.
So Will,
Go ahead.
That you had.
I know she has her hand up, but Will's first.
Okay, sorry. So it was mentioned last time that there was a system that was originally put in to try to keep it dry, but it didn't work effectively. Is there a system now that will keep it dry once this enclosure's off of it and construction's done?
That will be part of the design. Again, we've been focusing on investigation and analysis to move forward. We haven't moved into the design phase yet. But yes,
That's the plan. It's Laura?
Yeah, Laura Trushman for the State Historic Preservation Officer. We steward the Bennington Battle Monument. The ultimate goal is not to completely seal the monument so that there's no air to breathe. To Jamie's point, it's a living, breathing universe, and we need to keep the water and air moving through it. But the goal is to own the scaffolding so that we can reuse it as needed for maintenance going forward, but also figuring out through this whole design and study process how the building needs to breathe. Past restoration or repair projects have just repaired what they're looking at, not studied that this thing is a chimney and it's living, breathing, like I said, and we need to know what the effects of climate change and even recent earthquakes have affected the building. So we're continuously studying it, but to your point, once it gets restored, it will not be completely sealed. Like every crack and mortar joint won't be completely sealed. We'll figure out ventilation processes and dehumidifying processes and have a regular maintenance process.
And that's where I was going. I know it can't be sealed because it's got to have some air going through it. Understood?
Yes, and the estimates, if we do this correctly, we're looking at another 100 years of this being a really good, solid monument before it might need another checkup at the spot.
And then Sean?
What kind of a foundation is it sitting on?
our understanding is it is founded on bedrock.
What kind of bedrock? Because there's different kinds.
There is, yeah. I'd have to go back and check the bedrock. That was one of the last things that came in, but that's something that we're working on now. The foundation from the ground down is 9 feet, a 9-foot wall. Foundation walls are 9 feet thick below ground.
9 feet wide.
Of stone, correct.
Gotcha. And what's it made? What kind of stone?
It is at Sandy Hill. It's a dolomitic limestone.
So it's
and it was
porous, so it'll dry faster.
It was chosen, and there's for its durability and its ability to deal with temperature fluctuations.
Yeah.
There is yes. So yeah, that's just sort of showing you the construction here. So the walls right about the ground level are about 7 feet. We actually did a 6 foot long bore, a Goodman jack test. And got that out. And then as it rises all the way up to the top, it becomes one stone to the point that I believe those are only about 12 to 16 inches at the top. Single unit stone by the time it gets up to that part. And so that Sandy Hill dolomite, the stuff that came out of the quarry right before Bennington part of it went to the Brooklyn Bridge. So there's some of that stone in there as well. But that's going to be one of our considerations is where can we get replacement material to use for today? If you could scroll to the next one, please, Laura.
Can you get back to that mine, to that quarry?
It is no longer, I've driven and looked for it. It is no longer visible. It's a giant industrial area now, over in Hudson Falls area. There was a special rail line that went from the quarry right up to the monument. But all of the foundation stone is local stone from 2 quarries downtown that had another rail line coming up for delivery. So all the base and the foundation is local stone. And then the majority of the exterior stone on the monument is that Sandy Hill dolomitic limestone.
Madam Chair, we're gonna talk about this a lot more, right?
Well, there's no request in the capital bill for it. But what I want to know, you have spent to date, what it looked like on one of the slides, about 988,000 has been spent to date on
That's correct.
reviews.
That's correct.
What is the total cost, do you believe, for restoring the monument?
We have been given numbers and an indication that it's probably around $40 million, which we know is not going to come out of the capital budget, certainly. But we have to keep pushing the stone up the hill here, so to speak, to make sure that all the work that we've done in the last few years and the money we've invested in understanding the structure does not go to waste. These recommendations have a timeline, and we can't sit around too long figuring out what to do.
Right. So Laura, could you go back to just the previous page here where, phase A1 and then phase AB. So to dry out the monument would cost about $500,000.
That's correct.
And then you would put an enclosure after it dries out, you would put an enclosure on over it. And that would cost $5 to $10 million.
Correct. For context, the Washington Monument, the last project that they erected scaffolding up, it was a total of $7 million, I believe, just for the scaffolding. And that was 20 years ago.
Step 4, erection of the monument enclosure, is the scaffolding.
It's, yes. It's going to function both as a frame for the waterproof covering, but also will allow for the work to happen fully within it. So
in order for steps 1 through 3 to occur, you need to do step 4. You need to get the scaffolding up there first.
No, we need to do 1 and 3 before we do 4.
But nothing long-term can happen until 4 is done.
Correct. And these numbers come from that final recommendation number of 40 million.
Yeah. And Connor has a question too.
Yeah, sure. Good to see you, Jamie. It's is this gentler than city council probably? Probably a heavy lift these days. I'm just wondering, has there ever been a campaign with the federal delegation to designate this as a national monument? It seems like it passes the straight face test if I'm looking at the other national monuments.
Yes, we have talked to the National Park Service. It is already recognized for its national significance. It is not listed as a National Historic Landmark, which is a very heavy lift, and they've tried to discourage us from doing that. But as we explore fundraising and philanthropy and grants moving forward, that might be something that is totally worthwhile to us.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if a statement from the legislature to our federal delegation to explore that might be worthwhile.
Yeah, no, it would go through our office, so it's easily something to do, but because it's already recognized by the National Park Service as a nationally significant monument, it's kind of additional work that's not totally necessary, but if we need it as a marketing tool, we'll definitely explore that.
Be nice to get some federal monies.
That's what I'm thinking.
Will.
And I'm just, there's no point to do steps 1 through 3 unless step 4's gonna be funded, I'm assuming, because there's no point to spending all this, that $500,000 to dry it out. Not to start doing it, right?
Correct. Steps 1 through 3 are necessary for number 4 in phase 1A. But all of phase 1A is required before we can move forward into the next phase 1B.
It's all tied in, yeah.
I would add that 1 through 3 help us keep the monument safe and healthy and operating.
Yeah, I guess I didn't mention that. Just the monument is still shedding stone at times, and so one of the steps we have taken to for safety for our staff and the public, we've erected a fence as clean, simple, and aesthetic as we could find.
You can't even see it really here in this picture.
And we went around and spray painted all the reflective stuff.
Thank you.
And we have a covered walkway that's been installed to protect people from the secure perimeter, if you will, to the front door. And that at least will have to stay in place until it's replaced by a building enclosure system. We also have vertical access, who I had mentioned, the industrial rope specialists. They came, they've been part of all phases from the beginning. They descended the building and they've recorded every defect. There's over 6,000 cracks. There's everything now by using these digital tools, having the laser scan, we're able to now start to quantify some of these issues. And the next step obviously would be to design those repairs, and then a full project costing and steps like that can be finished.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And that'll be that. Joe, did you have something for this section or just? No. Okay.
Here for support.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Your next antibiotics at 5. Okay, yes, I mentioned this is not in the capital bill, but this is something that we're gonna have to somehow address because it's a real heavy lift for money, and I know I've got work going on behind me. So we'll talk about this when I get back in the building. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to sign off here because we've got some things to take care of here. I know we got Joe coming up. You can carry the load if you folks want to take a quick break because you've been sitting for quite a while. Can do that. I'm gonna see what my schedule is for tomorrow. Why don't we take a quick break and go off of YouTube, and then I can let you know what my schedule is gonna be tomorrow. Okay?
Okay.
Alice,